Hey guys, Jared Burton here with DAC Baseball, and today I just want to talk to you guys about developing rotational power. I did a Instagram series on this, so if you haven't checked that out, I'd recommend checking that out and just kind of reading the posts and seeing different ways of developing rotational power. But today I just want to go a little bit more in depth into part 4. Which was basically analyzing non-traditional methods of training the core versus traditional methods. So like non-traditional ended up being stuff using like some overspeed stuff with some bands, and then traditional method is like your anti-rotation cable chop and pal-off press. And so let's get into it. So with this basically study, so what I did is I just did it on myself. This isn't like this isn't like what numbers that everybody else is going to get, but I think it lays a really good baseline of a general idea of which exercises are going to produce a greater muscle excitation than others. And like I said, again, it might be different for everyone else or for everybody, but generally these exercises are going to be higher than the non-traditional are going to be a little bit higher than the traditional exercises. And so I threw EMGs on 6 different spots. So the left rector spinae and the right. So left, right, and then external obliques, left and right, and then also the lats, left and right. And so basically the reason why I did this was because those 6 areas basically make up and the entire movements of the core when it comes to flexion, extension, lateral bending, coiling motion. All these muscles are going to play a role. And so I wanted to basically take exercises that were non-traditional and traditional and compare the muscle excitation in these different spots. And then in the end, you'll see how I basically took all the numbers from each. So like all the exercises, I took the exercises from each muscle area, and then I averaged that, and then to get like a total core score basically, which is just the average norm values throughout the entire core. So we know like, hey, this one exercise is really going to train the core and this exercise is not going to train the core at all. So basically real quick with this chart, you can see left erector spinae. What produced pretty high in here was the throw and the oscillatory banded and the sprints. Right rector spinae, you see the Fowler core, oscillatory arms bent, oscillatory banded, anterior posterior kettlebell. So these are like non-traditional methods. Left external oblique, again we have the anterior posterior Fowler kettlebell, sprinting, another kettlebell movement. On the next one, right external oblique, oscillatory banded, the Fowler core again, sprinting, left lat sprinting, and then right lat was a little bit interesting. This one was basically the kneeling diagonal chop and then the counter movement med ball throw. But what I thought was interesting about this is in the right lat, the kneeling diagonal chop, and then also you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5th one down, the anti-rotation chop. Those all produced a pretty high muscle excitation only in that right lat compared to other areas, like other muscle groups that I tested, which tells me that the anti-rotation chops act more like a lat pull down than they do actually a core exercise. So I think that's just something to be noted and aware of. So you can look here. This is where I talked about where I took each of the muscle groups, and then like I took the norm values and then I averaged them. So like the Fowler oscillator, I got 100%, oscillator banded 96.8, swing was 65%, sprint was 114. I know there's a little bit more sprints. Med balls, I did a lot of different med ball throws. Basically those came out to be 82%, throw came out to be 92. So just remember that a swing was 65%, and we are looking for exercises that are going to produce a greater muscle excitation than 65%. And then what's from on here, we can see that like the oscillator banded is going to do that, the Fowler oscillatory core is going to do that, sprints are going to do that, med balls are going to be doing that, and even a baseball throw. But we don't want to compare the swing to the throw. We want to be able to compare the swing and the throw to the exercises. And so then if we see that the throw, the total core was 92%, we need to know exercises that are going to produce a greater muscle excitation than 92%, so that the intensity is going to be higher, and it's going to help with translating over into rotational power. So what's above 92% we see is that the med ball throws aren't really going to do it. A sprint would, the oscillatory banded would, and the Fowler oscillatory core would. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, and then the next stuff that I looked at, the Palloff press, 49.5%, which isn't going to produce a greater muscle excitation than the swing or the baseball throw. Anti-rotation chop, 76%. Again, not great. It's good enough for the swing, but not for the baseball throw. Diagonal chop, 62.3%. And that one's not high enough it's not higher than the baseball swing or the throw. Lateral kettlebell, 72%. It was higher than the swing, but for the throw, no. And then the anterior posterior kettlebell, 95%, which ended up being higher than both the throw and the baseball swing. All right, and so basically that's where then I put it in this graph. And so you see that, like, I took the 4 top non-traditional methods. So the sprint, the Fowler oscillatory core, oscillatory banded, and anterior posterior Fowler kettlebell. And all 4 of these exercises produced a greater muscle excitation than the baseball swing and the baseball throw. The traditional method of anti-rotation chop, diagonal anti-rotation chop, and the Palloff press. And you can see that, like, the non-traditional methods are going to have a greater ability to target the core as a full unit, and that the traditional methods don't really do that. So the traditional methods are lacking in that. And so one of the ways that I think we can start developing rotational power and do it uniquely is by these non-traditional methods, whether we're having you sprint or using the Fowler core oscillatory, the oscillatory banded, or the anterior posterior Fowler kettlebell. So through these means, we can start developing rotational power, because we know that these exercises produce a greater muscle excitation, like a greater intensity than the swing and the throw. So we know that it's going to just kind of help transfer over, build tissue resiliency, and also kind of teach you how to generate force and absorb force. And these traditional methods are kind of lacking in that. These are more a little like static movements. The non-traditional are more dynamic, where you're actually your pelvis is moving, like during a sprint. Everything's moving, but when you do these traditional methods, they're more set. So like you're like wide base for an anti-rotation chop, and then you're just moving your arms across. There is no like training of the pelvis and how that actually moves. So the traditional methods are lacking a lot when it comes to generating basically developing rotational power. So now I want to show you just kind of a couple of the exercises. So the first one is the oscillatory banded that you might start seeing used in your program. And again, this one produced a high muscle excitation all throughout. As I can go back, so the oscillatory band, 96.8%. So it's going to train your lats, your external obliques, and your rectus spinae. All right, and next exercise is the anterior posterior kettlebell. And this one produced 95%. So this is another exercise you might start seeing. And I'll go back to the chart just one more time. In the Fowler oscillatory core, there's a lot of this on Instagram between Brady's page and my page. So if you don't know what that is, I recommend you checking that out. And then sprint, that's something I think you should already have knowledge of. But and many people too say that sprinting is the best way to train the core as a full unit. And I think this clearly shows that this is a really good way to train the core. All right, well, thank you for watching.